celebration of Sviatoslav Richter's 110th anniversary. We have a joint paper that's going to be delivered by Dr. Hong Ding and Zhang Shuyi. Dr. Hong Ding is Associate Professor of Musicology at the Shanghai Conservatory of Music. His research explores theoretical and aesthetic issues in contemporary Chinese music, transformational theory, and performance practice. He has published journal articles and book chapters on functional harmony, 12-tone music, and the works of Debussy, Bartók, and Messiaen. He is a co-editor and author and translator of several books. Zhang Shuyi holds a Bachelor of Music and Clarinet Performance from Shanghai University and is currently pursuing master's degree in musicology in Shanghai Conservatory of Music. His research focuses on musical performance studies, particularly the cognitive impact of body movements during performance. His broader interests include performance aesthetics and the sociology of music performance. Please welcome Dr. Hong Ding and Zhang Shuyi.
Okay, thank you, Professor Zavlunov, for the introduction. I hope I pronounce your name correct. Good afternoon. The title of our paper is Compensating, Rubato, Reconsidered, Sviatoslav Richter and the Performance Ideals of Romanticism. I have to say at the beginning that I and my co-author, Shuyi, neither of us specialized in Russian music. But this study in performance practice focuses on three extraordinary Russian musicians: the pianist Richter, his teacher, the legendary pedagogue Heinrich Neuhaus, and of course the composer Sergei Rachmaninoff. So we are very glad to be taking part in IRMS this year and to have the opportunity to present our work. We will start with a quotation from Neuhaus. In his famous book, The Art of Piano Playing, Neuhaus wrote, I think that's the next slide. I have frequently had occasion to tell my pupils when confronted by a rubato that rubare is the Italian for stealing, and if you steal time without returning it soon after, you are a thief. If you first accelerate the tempo, you must subsequently slow down, remain an honest man, restore balance and harmony. Now, even though this was written in a book published back in 1958, this is almost 70 years ago. It already sounded like a cliche at the time. Because the idea that you can steal time as long as you pay it back had been repeated for generations. In fact, this metaphorical language about rubato goes back well before the Romantic era into the heart of the 18th century performance teaching. One of the earliest surviving mentions of rubato appears in a 1723 vocal treatise by Pier Francesco Tosi, who called it an honorable theft, so long as the time is skillfully repaid. Tosi was a celebrated vocal pedagogue and a former castrato singer, widely respected for his expressive artistry and for shaping generations of performers across Europe. His description already captured the basic logic of what we now call compensating rubato, a term used to describe the kind of rhythmic give and take that seeks to maintain temporal balance within the bar of phrase. Later, instrumental pedagogy took up this same idea. Hans C.P. Bach and Leopold Mozart each addressed rubato in treatises published during the 1750s. These texts would become foundational to modern performance teaching. Skip this next slide. By the 19th century, the notion of rubato as a balance between rhythmic liberty and structural control had become deeply embedded in musical discourse. What had begun as a flexible vocal practice in the 18th century gradually evolved into a codified, almost moralized principle of performance. Throughout the long 19th century, the metaphor of stealing and repaying time appeared repeatedly, not only in pedagogical treatises, but also in critical writings and public discourse about expressive playing. This language carried with it romantic ethos, the idea that true expression required inner freedom, but also inner discipline. Rubato, in this sense, became a symbol of expressive authenticity when used correctly. And then skip this. In short, compensating rubato had become more than a technical, more than an explanation of technique. It was an aesthetic ideal, a core element of the Romantic performance tradition, shaping generations of teachers and interpreters. But in the 20th century, this ideal came under critical scrutiny. As recording and analysis technologies advanced, scholars began to ask, did performers actually compensate for rubato in real time? In 1909, Henry Fink dismissed the idea altogether, calling it a pedagogic hoax, and writing, quote, the value of notes diminished in one period through an accelerando cannot always be restored in another by a retardando. What is lost is lost. In 1928, John McEwen analyzed reproducing piano rolls by Busoni, Bachmann, and Carreño and found no evidence of any systematic temporal balance between faster and slower passages. In the 1980s, Robert Phillips similarly noted that early recordings by Paderewski and Isai often exhibit flexible tempo, but without internal compensation. This led Nicholas Cook to argue that compensating rubato is best understood not as a description of actual performance, but as a pedagogical fiction, a normative tool for teaching control, not a map of real practice. A recent study by my colleague, Professor Yang Jian from Shanghai Conservatory, revisited this issue using software-based analysis of Scriabin's 1910 piano roll of the poem Opus 28. Neuhaus famously referred to this performance when formulating his idea of stealing and returning time, as quoted above. But the data tell a different story. There is no measurable correspondence between stolen and returned time. What is lost is lost. Okay, next. Yet, if as many 20th century scholars suggested, compensating rubato is more pedagogical myth than performance reality, why has it proved so resilient? Is it merely a rhetorical device to justify rhythmic freedom, or can it shape real performance choices? Has it ever moved from prescription to sound? These questions became especially pertinent when we encounter a curious and exceptional passage in Richter's performance of Rachmaninoff's Second Piano Concerto. The passage occurs at the beginning of the recapitulation in the first movement, where the piano reintroduces the developmental theme in counterpoint with the orchestra's first theme. This contrapuntal texture helps build the movement's climatic movement. Let's hear it. Okay, this is the 1959 performance with the Warsaw Philharmonic Orchestra. Apart from the ritardando marked in the end, Rachmaninoff provided no tempo indications to suggest any change in pace, but Richter's interpretation stands out. To investigate this further, we turn to empirical analysis. Shuyi will explain the details.
We examine visual tempo data drawn from multiple recordings of this work using the software Sonic Visualizer, a common tool in performance study. Generate tempo curves that allow us to observe tempo changes in visually and quantitatively. What you see here is the spectrogram of the passage we just heard. The vertical purple lines marked each piano onsets, initially detected by software and then manually adjusted for accuracy based on waveform and spectrogram. The green curve represents the time interval between onsets. When the curve rises, the onsets are closer together, indicating a faster tempo. When it drops, the tempo slows down. This lets us track tempo changes with precision. This approach becomes even more intuitive when paired with a scroll visualization synchronous to the audio. The metronomic beats you hear are automatically generated by software to mark each onset. In each of the two musical phrases, he applies a compensating rubato, a clear acceleration followed by a corresponding retardando. He intensified this effect between the two phrases right at the half cadence, thus highlighting the parallel period relationship. Aside from the retardando at the end of the excerpt, which is explicitly marked in score by the composer, the piano part features several additional tempo fluctuations that are not entirely mirrored by the orchestra. This raises an important question. Was this type of tempo fluctuations a deliberate interpretive choice, or could it just be due to other factors, perhaps imposed by conductor, shaped by orchestral coordination, or simply a performance inconsistency, or even just a slip? To address this, we analyzed three additional recordings of concerto performed by Richter: the 1948 recording with USSR Symphony Orchestra, the 1951 recording with Moscow Youth Symphony, and another 1959 recording with Leningrad Philharmonic. The results show that all four recordings share the same tempo changing pattern. Each features some distinction compensating rubato movements. In every case, Richter accelerates the octave accent to compensate not only the retardando indicated by Rachmaninoff, but also the slowing down caused by agogic accent. Also noteworthy, in all four versions, Richter placed the tempo peak toward the later part of the first phrase. And let's listen to the Leningrad recording as an example. But these shared features suggest that Richter's use of compensating rubato was not incidental, nor the result of an one-off performance contact. It was a deliberate and consistent interpretive strategy. This finding led to a further question: was Richter's rubato approach common among other pianists? To find out, we extended our analysis to all the recordings of the same piece that we were able to obtain, and found that none of them exhibit tempo features similar to Richter's. Here is the list of the recordings we examined. Among them, 4 recordings deserve small explanation: those by Rachmaninoff himself, by Arthur Rubinstein, who was a contemporary to Richter, Grigory Sokolov, and Lang Lang. All were analyzed using the same method. The recording by Rachmaninoff himself is arguably the most authoritative. He maintains a brisk and steady beat, showing no sign of slowing between the two phrases. While minor fluctuations appear in the curve, they are limited to two adjacent beats and seem to reflect local articulation, not intentional rubato. In fact, Rachmaninoff often plays the second beat with exaggerated speed, possibly to avoid any dragging. Now let's hear that out. Clearly, he had no interest in inserting compensating rubato here. In Rubinstein's version, recorded in the same decade as Richter, we again observe a remarkably steady beat. Two minor tempo fluctuations do appear, but closer inspection reveals that these result from ensemble coordination. The orchestra slightly lags behind the piano at these moments. Sokolov, a more contemporary pianist, exhibits similar tempo handling, maintaining overall steadiness while playing slightly ahead of the orchestra. As with Rubinstein, there is no evidence of compensating rubato between phrases, and due to the time, we will just skip this. As for Lang Lang, among the youngest pianists in this sample, delivers a calm and steady tempo, a retardando which happened between two phrases, but the degree of tempo variation is much more restrained. After analyzing all these recordings, we can sum up that the use of compensating rubato gestures appears to be unique to Richter. None of the other pianists in our sample, including Rachmaninoff himself, follow this structural approach, nor is this rubato pattern indicated in the score, making this recurrence in Richter's recording the most striking. These findings strongly support the view of Richter's use of compensating rubato was not a convention, but a deliberate and personal interpretive strategy. It reflects his individual aesthetic priority compared to external constraints. Moreover, among all performers analyzed, Richter exhibited the most dramatic range of tempo fluctuation, resulting in a heightened sense of expressive contour and formal shaping. Now I am giving back the microphone to Professor Hong.
Okay, what insight can we gain from this analysis? In this passage, Richter appears to combine two distinct types of rubato as defined by musicologist Richard Hasson, author of the rubato entry in the New Grove Dictionary and of Stolen Time, still the most comprehensive study on the subject to date. In his book, Hasson distinguished between two historical types of rubato. The earlier type, common in the 18th century, involved one part, typically the melody, moving ahead of or behind the beat for expressive effect, while the bass maintains a strict rhythm. The deviation is temporary and resolved back into alignment, guided by the accompaniment. The later type, more characteristic of the 19th century, involves tempo fluctuation across the whole texture, alternating between acceleration and deceleration for heightened expression. In Richter's case, the tempo fluctuation in the piano part clearly reflect the later tradition, while the piano's rhythmic freedom set against the orchestra's steady pulse evokes the structure of earlier rubato. This synthesis offers a unique window in how rubato can serve both expressive and structural purpose. This interpretive strategy is all the more striking given Richter's well-documented fidelity to the composer's text. He has repeatedly stated that he aimed to play only what is in the score, nothing more, nothing less. He insisted on observing all directions. And yet, in Rachmaninoff's concerto, he consistently applies a rubato structure that's not marked in the score, not shown in the composer's recording. So, why would a pianist so committed to textural fidelity choose to shape time freely in this particular passage? Perhaps we can return to Neuhaus to find out. In the same book we quoted at the beginning, he also offers a more profound aesthetic vision of rubato. Quote, "This is the true kingdom of dialectic. The greater the pianist's awareness of the rhythmic structure, the more freely, the more logically does he depart from it." Unquote. He then named Richter as an examiner of this principle. Quote, "Rhythm in his playing is so logical, so straight and free at once. This is the real freedom. 2 or 3 departures from strict rhythm in Richter are more meaningful than hundreds in a pianist without this total conception." Perhaps, as his teacher suggested, it was precisely at the climax of the work, between what Rachmaninoff wrote and what the music demanded, that Richter found the space to complete this dialectic logic, not by breaking the rhythm, but by revealing its power through departure, momentarily transcending the score in an expressive act rooted in the romantic aesthetic of the work's totality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Because of time limitations, we have to cut out the Q&A, but we're so grateful for your wonderful paper.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Daniel. And today, this concludes our today's conference, and we will see everyone a day after tomorrow. All right?
Okay, thank you.